Okay, so welcome back to the button clicker Love2D game tutorial. This is part 3, and in this tutorial we are going to be going over creating our main menu and then switching between play states or game states, sorry, so that we can either draw the play screen or the main menu. And later on in a few more tutorials we're going to create the game over screen. But before we do that, we're going to create the main menu and the play scene. You may notice that I've switched to a dark theme. I had a few people reach out to me and say that the light theme was a little bit hard for them to read. So I hope that this dark theme makes things a little bit easier. So if we go ahead and run the project and see where we left off, you can see we created some text on the screen called button clicker game, and we are in the main menu game state. So let's go ahead and close the game, and let's actually load a different font, right? Because that's that font there is the default font that comes with Love2D, and we can't really change it that much. So let's load our own font. So you may notice in my project here that I've created a folder called assets. So you want to create a folder called assets, and inside that folder we're going to store all things like fonts, sounds, maybe if you had images you'd store these in there as well. But assets, and I've created another folder inside of assets called fonts, and I've loaded 2 fonts. I will put the link in the description for the fonts here. I can't provide you with a download because I'm not sure how that would work with licensing and stuff like that. But I will put the link to these fonts if I can find it. If not, you can use any font downloaded from any website that is of the type .ttf or true type font. So just for a bit of a, clarification, I guess. Right, so we want to load a font. So if you have a font, once you've downloaded a font of the type true type font, go ahead and put that into your fonts folder, and now we can load it. So we need to create a comment again, because I like to create lots of comments. So let's just say load the fonts in our game. And you can see I'll put this in the love.load underneath the game state. And we are going to say that this is going to be the menu font. So we're going to say menu font is equal to love.graphics.new font, and then we have to give it a path to this font. So we're going to use menu font, but you have to put this in a string, and it has to be, it has to contain the name of the font plus the .ttf at the end. So mine is in assets, and yours should be too, hopefully. Fonts, if I can type today, and it is called menu_font .ttf. And after that we put a comma, and now we specify the size of this font. I'm going to use something like 32, make it quite big, and if we run the game now we shouldn't get an error. It should have loaded that font. So that font is loaded now and we can use it. So let's actually come down to where we where we print that font on the screen. So where we print in button clicker game is right here. Before we print that to the screen, we want to say love.graphics.set font. So we've loaded the font. Now we're going to set that font. And in brackets, you can simply just type menu font. The menu font is the font that we loaded up here, and we're setting the font before we're printing it to the screen here. So if we press Alt-L, notice the font has changed, and it's no longer in the center of a screen. That's because we were minusing half of the height of the default text. So we're going to put 16 in here, 16 pixels, because it's half of 32. And it should be directly in the center now. Nice. So button clicker game is in the center of our screen, and we've loaded the font. Good. So I'm actually going to move this a little bit more up because I want to print underneath it, right? So I'm going to maybe say let's do window height divided by 2 minus something like 80. See where that prints it. Okay, that's cool. Now, alternatively, you could simplify this by getting rid of window height and just type in something like 100. See where that prints it. It's quite high. So if you remember, our window height is, I think it was 600, right? So 400 would be the center. Let's actually go 350, like that. Oh, sorry, no, it wouldn't be 350, would it? It would actually be 190. There we go. So we have the text up here, and now we are going to draw another thing underneath that using a different font. So I'm going to use the same menu font, but the problem with Love2D is that if we want to use this font again at a different size, we actually have to create another font. So I'm going to duplicate this line, and you can do that in Visual Studio Code by pressing Shift Alt and the down arrow. Duplicate that line. I'm going to call this menu font underscore small, and I'm going to change the size here to something like, let's think 14. In fact, 12. Yeah, 12 will do. So we print the main menu font there. We then need to set the font again because we're going to print something else now. Love.graphics.setFont, menu font small, and then we can simply just copy this line here where we print the button clicker game and paste underneath, and change that text there to let's say press space to start, just like that. And we can move it down, let's think it's going to be 12, so we'll move it down 24, so 190, let's move it to 14. Oh, that's a bit, okay, let's go again, let's go, sorry, 300. Cool. So we have the main menu text and the press space to start. So that is the most basic menu you can make. There's a lot of stuff you can do with that, but it does get quite advanced. So we're not going to go too in depth with how to create menus and stuff like that, and how to add effects. That will be for later tutorials. But for right now, this works perfectly. So you see it says press space to start, but we press space, nothing happens, right? Can't do anything. So that's where the love.keyPressed function comes in. So we need to create a new function, and we can do this underneath the draw function here, and say function. And I don't know why it keeps adding these args, but love.keyPressed, and then it takes an out, or it passes out of a key. So just type key into the brackets, and we're going to say check for key input. So what happens with this function? This is a default function within Love. Every time we use love dot something, this is from the Love engine, and key pressed will register any key on the keyboard, and it passes the key. Okay, so whenever we press a key, there's a function inside of Love that looks for the key. When we press the key, it passes the key out to this key variable. Okay, so this key variable will contain whatever key we press, and we can actually say things like if key is equal to, say, W, then do something, right? So the value, whatever key we press, gets passed into this variable here, which we can use only in this function, but we can use it to detect keys. So let's get rid of that. I don't want to open that up. What we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and actually transition to our play state, right? So we're going to say if we press space, so if key is equal to space, then, also not and, end. If key is equal to space, we're going to check what state we're currently in. So if game state is equal to our main menu, then we say end. We can simply say game state is equals play state, like that. So what this basically means, so if we press space, it's going to check, are we in our main menu state? If we are, then we're going to switch to our play state. So you notice how up in the draw function, we said if game state is main menu, then draw the menu. If we're in play state, then draw the play screen. So if we actually press Alt and L to debug that now, or run it, we're in the main menu, we press space, and it takes us to the play screen where we are going to be able to play our game. Simple as that. Okay, so now we've done that, we can actually maybe start to mess around with the button, right? But we need to check some things. So we're going to be doing a lot of work now in update. And one of the first things we need to do is say, are we in our play state? So we need to check in our update function. So if game state is equal to play state, sorry I can't type, then we need to shrink the button. Oh my god, I can't type today. So we haven't actually made anything to shrink the button yet, and I'm going to do this in a function because we may want to use it for other things, and if we just make a function, we can call it wherever. So go below our key press function. Now we're going to make a custom function of our own, and that is as simple as, again, writing a function. I don't know why it keeps putting args in, that's so annoying. I'm going to change that in a bit. Function, and we are going to say function button underscore shrink, like that. Now whatever we write in this function, in fact we can just put it underneath here now. So if game state, in our update function, if game state is equal to play state, then button underscore shrink, like that. And then we can do some logic in here. So let's actually write button shrink. So to do that, all we need to do is just say button size. So we get the size of a button. Button.size is equal to the current button size. Button, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me today? Button.size minus the button shrink speed. Now we haven't set that up, so let's go and, in fact, let's just type it and then we'll set it up. Button dot shrink. Oh my gosh, Connor, what's wrong? Speed times dt. I'm going to pass dt in there. So let's quickly create this button dot shrink speed, and then I'll tell you why we times it by dt. So back up to our button. Let's say button dot shrink speed is equal to, and let's just double check here. What I 7. So it's default of 7. Button dot shrink speed equals 7. You can see we passed in dt. So this, if we go back up to here in our update function, we actually need to put dt in there. Again, so remember how I said in a previous tutorial, the update passes out a value called delta time, which is now dt. We're passing that into our button shrink, and we're timesing this by dt. Basically, what this does is that no matter whether we're running the game at 1,000 frames per second or 5 frames per second, that button is always going to shrink by the same amount. It's going to be frame rate. It's not frame rate independent, so it's not going to really, if I didn't times that, if my frame rate was 1,000, the button's going to shrink a lot faster on some different systems, if that makes sense. So that's why we times by dt. Okay, so now if we actually run and go to the play state and press space, we should notice our button is shrinking. Great. So it shrinks, and it will shrink so much that it will scale back up. So now it is negative. It's in the negative value. It's changed shape and everything. we could just say, to prevent that, we can just go into our button shrink and say if button dot size is greater than 0, then only perform this action. Of course, we need to end that if statement. So now it should shrink to 0, or the size 0, so pretty much disappear, and it won't keep going. It'll completely stop. Boom. There we go. Nice. So this will shrink our button. So we'll just say shrink the button. Like that. And now we need to do some other things. Maybe we want this button, if it shrinks, it's going to spawn in a new random position, right? So we can say, we can make another function that sets the button to a random position. So let's do that now. Let's say function, let's just call it new button position. Go ahead and end. And remember, we can literally just say button.x is equal. And now we are going to get a random value, right? And I am going to say if button.x is equal to math.random, and we are going to pass in our button.size, and so our minimum is going to be button.size, and our maximum is going to be so we're on the x, so it'll be window width minus button dot size. So what does that mean? Well, when we call new button position, it's going to set the x position of the button to a random value between the button dot size and our window width minus button dot size. So basically, this just makes sure that it won't spawn the button outside of our visible window. Because if you can imagine, let's just open up the old paint. Let's draw a square. This is our window. So if our button is, say, 50 pixels, right? It's 50 pixels wide. Where's the little brush on paint? I don't really use paint. Is that it? No, that's the pencil. Is there a brush? Okay, that'll do. So our button's 50 pixels wide. The reason we say button.size is because we will eventually set a random size, but if the button is 50 pixels wide, it will spawn it here. So this is 0, okay? And our window width, what did I say it was again? 800. If we spawn it at 0, remember the center of the button is at the, here, right? It's right in the middle, because it's a circle. If we said 0, it will spawn the button like there, if that makes sense. So we wouldn't be able to see it. The reason we say button size and min is because it's going to move it over by the size of the button, and it will spawn it, there, or right on the edge. In fact, let's just erase this so I can better demonstrate that. It will spawn it like there, rather than being off the screen. And then window width, so it's 800 minus the size of our button, will spawn it on the screen there. I'm sorry if that made not a lot of sense, and I apologise for my very poor drawing skills. Yeah, I will get better at explaining things. I'm just not used to this yet. Okay. So yeah, that's what that does. And now we can pretty much do the same for the y, right? So button.y is equal to math.random. And we can say button size. And this time we say window height minus. Oh, sorry, it'll be, let me think. Yeah, minus button dot size again. So every time this is called, it will move the button to a random position that is on, in our screen. It's not off the screen, it will be within our window. That's what it does. So let's say set a new position for the button. And we can do this in the update function. So we're shrinking the button right there, and we'll say if our button dot size is less than or equal to 0. Sorry, I keep putting in brackets because I'm so used to programming like C++. If I forgot what I was going to say. Button dot size is less than or equal to 0, then we need to call new button position. So it's going to set the new position. Now you won't be able to see this because we're not setting a new size for the button. So again, let's create another function, and call this new button size. And we will simply just call or say the button.size is equal to another random value, so math.random, because we don't want it to be the same as before, right, which is a random value. And we'll state a minimum size. So I've tested this already and I've worked out that 20 is usually a good value for a minimum spawn size. Anything smaller than that, it gets really hard to click. So 20, and let's do like 80. So it will set the button size to a random value between 20 and 80. So set a new random button size. I don't know why I can't type today. Jeez, it's probably because it's late. Yeah, so set a new random button size. We need to call that up here. So if we get less than 0, set a new position and say new button size. So if the button shrinks to 0 or below, which it doesn't, but we're just checking just in case because sometimes programming can be very weird. If the button shrinks to 0 or below, reset. So reset its position and its size. So now if we test that, press space to get into the game, the button should shrink and appear somewhere else on the screen at a random size. Boop. Okay, so that was step 1. You can notice now we can just leave it and it will continue to appear at random positions. There we go. Nice. Now what we could do is define a margin in our random values, but we won't do that just now. It's pretty simple. So there we go. We have made our main menu and we've now given some functionality to these buttons. So I apologize if I kind of didn't make a lot of sense there. Please do let me know in the comments if there's anything that you need me to explain a little bit more. As I said before, I'm still getting used to this tutorial thing, and eventually I'll get a lot better at it, but yeah. So in part 3, we're actually going to make it so we can click these buttons and we will use the functions that we just created to spawn them in new positions and change the size. So stay tuned for part 3, and thanks for watching.